We're back on the record in the case of Donald Erickson v. Germantown School District. It's case number CR 2022013111. This is day 2, part 2. We are currently on the complainant's direct examination. The appearances, of course, remain the same. Attorney Hitchcock-Cross, did you have any further questions for Mr. Erickson?
I do, and I have a couple more exhibits, thank you. But we're clearly on the downhill slope just for everybody else's planning purposes. So I will share this document. This is C17, complainant 17. And do you see that, Mr. Erickson?
I do.
Okay. And I see it's a Germantown School District. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Can you generally describe what this letter is?
It is a letter of recommendation.
Okay. And who wrote this letter?
Susan Clymer, principal at Kennedy Middle School.
And we discussed this before generally?
Yes.
Okay. So, but you can identify this letter as being the letter we talked about generally before.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. So based on that, Judge, I'm going to move for C17 to be admitted.
Attorney Pollard, any objection?
Well, it is hearsay, but other than that, no objection.
All right, then it will be admitted.
Great. Then I'm going to show you another document here. And this is R12, Respondents 12. Do you see this document here? It says EX.R-12. Okay. And just reading from the top, I see Don, and I think that's a colon 2/1921. Do you see that here?
I do.
Okay. Have you seen this document before?
I have not.
Okay. But this document is handwritten, is that right?
Correct.
Do you recognize the handwriting on this document?
I would have to say it's Ms. Altendorf.
Okay, and that's based on your dealings with her?
Correct.
Okay. And the first thing I see on there is Don 2/1921. Do you see that?
I do.
And your name is Don, right?
Correct.
Okay. The next, the number one thing on there says plan of improvement. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and then it also says didn't want to move forward with his letter from Wednesday. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Based on this here, do you believe that Ms. Altendorf knew about your letter about overtime?
Yes, I do.
Objection, lack of foundation. There's no evidence that Ms. Altendorf wrote these notes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so at this point, yeah, Attorney Hitchcock-Cross, I think we're going to have Ms. Altendorf testify to the veracity of these notes, because right now there's not the authentication necessary.
Well, he said
he's
that
already testified additionally that he believed that she was already aware of it, just based on the fact that Miss Mann was asked about the I believe it was the calendar entries.
Sure,
So we
he's
already
identified it based on its handwriting.
Well, he
That's
said he believes it's her handwriting, but that's still the content of it is still would likely need to be testified to by her. I don't know. You could also ask him if you would like about this meeting specifically and whether that was brought up in the meeting. There isn't any
Sure.
foundation for that testimony yet either.
We also need, I appreciate that, Judge. I hope we can also keep in mind that it's the respondent's exhibit and therefore is a statement of a party opponent. So there is no hearsay at all here. Certainly, Ms. Altendorf's statements are not hearsay because she is, again, a party opponent. Right.
But we still need to establish. I don't think it's been conclusively established that these are her notes. It's very possible and likely, but we haven't established that yet.
And just to be clear, Judge, from my understanding, that's because the complainant said he believed this to be her handwriting.
Yeah, but I think there's also issue about what's written on it. So there's no testimony about that. I don't think there's been any testimony about a meeting on February 19th. We've talked about February 17th, what occurred on the 18th, but there's been no testimony from anyone about a meeting on February 19th.
Okay, yeah, I mean, this isn't make or break, and I don't think any of these issues are, I think we can get this in all sorts of other ways. I don't think this is a hill to die on, here. So I understand that, but, to the extent that I disagree, I just want to have that on the record and be clear.
Sure.
So I appreciate
Sure.
that. Okay.
And just so the record's clear, I'm not excluding it right now. I'm just saying that we need a little bit more foundation before we can address the admissibility based on the objection.
Oh, I absolutely understood that. I totally get
Okay.
that. And that's why my comment was, I think all that's at stake is having him testify about it now, as opposed to possibly at some other time, or we'll see. So no,
And just to be clear,
I,
my objection was primarily to the form of the question where the attorney Hitchcock-Cross was indicating that attorney Altendorf had written these notes. So that was the objection. It's, if he believes that, that's fine, but the question should not, there's no foundation for the form of the question.
okay. And I get all that, and I think the best thing to do here is just to move on, because I think we're all clear on where we're at with this issue, and I think it'll be easier to just resolve it as opposed to continuing. So with that in mind, then, we will, stop. I have no more questions for, my client at this time.
All right, Attorney Pollard, did you want to begin your cross?
Yes, thank you. Pull up.
Can you hear him okay? I'm gonna turn it up.
Probably would help.
We have, oops, sorry. R10. I'm pulling up exhibit R10, which I believe is also exhibit C1. I guess we could,
Correct, and it's been admitted as C1.
okay.
This is the same exhibit though.
Yes. So in front of you is what is exhibit C1, which is a letter to Michael Nowak, Human Resources Director, dated February 17th, 2021. Mr. Erickson, do you recognize this letter?
I do.
And you submitted this letter on February 17th, 2021 to Mr. Nowak, correct?
To Mr. Nowak and Mr. Stousland.
In person.
In person, yes.
Prior to submitting this letter, how would you describe your relationship with Dr. Stousland?
I would have to say fine.
What about Mr. Nowak? How was your relationship with him?
I would have to also say fine. There were many things in the past that Mr. Nowak actually stood up for me on.
What about Miss Altendorf? How was your relationship with her prior to this letter?
Ms. Altendorf, I would say it was okay. I wouldn't say everything was fantastic. It was a good relationship. She was in the process of learning how the district department functioned, the maintenance department. I did feel that I was being micromanaged quite a bit though.
Okay. Why did you feel that way?
Just because of the direction that Ms. Altendorf would have me heading to. I actually did all the tasks and everything that Ms. Altendorf asked me to do.
Okay. Did you ever have any discussion with her indicating that you felt she was micromanaging you?
No, I did not.
Okay. Well, I guess sticking at this letter, when you became the supervisor of building and grounds in what year?
I like to say 2007, 2008, well, probably about 2008.
Okay. And so at least from that point on, you were an exempt employee for purposes of overtime. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you were not eligible for overtime from at least 2009 until your retirement. Is that correct?
Well, correct to an extent. When I was first hired, I was actually paid on a per diem basis. It took over about a year and a half. It has become under my understanding, but due to time restraints, that I was actually eligible for overtime during that time period.
Okay. So I guess the point is, when you submitted this letter, you weren't raising any concern about your own compensation. Is that true?
Correct.
If you had a good relationship with Mr. Nowak and Dr. Stousland at that time, is there any reason why you didn't have a conversation with them about this issue prior to submitting this letter?
It wouldn't have made a difference
Why do you say that?
because neither Mr. Nowak nor Mr. Stousland would go against Brittany Altendorf and any of her policies that she was implementing.
Well, then did you also feel that this letter wouldn't make any difference?
I would hope it would have because I was stating state laws and federal laws, I believe.
Okay, but why wouldn't you just discuss those state and federal laws with Dr. Stousland in person, given your good relationship with him?
It wouldn't have made a difference. It definitely would not have made a difference. Many others had brought up the point and it was falling on deaf ears. It shouldn't have taken me as an administrator to bring it up to their attention when others have.
No, I understand that, but I'm trying to understand like the difference between making a verbal complaint or a discussion versus filing a written letter. Like, why did you feel it was necessary to file a written letter instead of just starting with a conversation?
I wanted to go on record. It's
Did
a
you think
public
that
record
filing
this
this
way.
letter, did you think that filing this letter would protect you from any future disciplinary action from the district?
It wasn't needed at the time. There were no future disciplinary actions being taken to me at the time. There's no indication anything was going wrong. That
Well,
there were
do you
any
believe
issues.
that after you file this letter, any discipline or any job performance plan that you would have been placed on would have been a form of retaliation?
They would have been based on the testimony of others here as well. And they were. It wasn't just my feeling. They were.
What do you mean they were?
They were retaliation.
Why do you say that?
Ms. Altendorf is a very vindictive person. If anybody crosses her, and she has even made these comments to others, that she would go after them. She
No,
would not
I
let.
understand your feelings about Miss Altendorf, but
That's not a feeling.
Excuse me, Judge. Excuse me, Mr. Pollard. The witness has every right to answer the question, and please don't interrupt him while he's answering his question. That's not going to work for me.
And I agree with that, but at the same time as well, he should wait until a question is posed. You can redirect with anything. So he had also jumped in when Attorney Pollard was questioning as well. Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Attorney Pollard.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
I understand your feelings about Miss Altendorf. My question is, how do you feel you were retaliated against?
Immediately after I submitted this letter, everything went south. That's when my first meeting with Mr. Stousland about my lack of communication. That was the first job evaluation that I was given that was poorly. It was the PIP. There were no letters, any complaints prior to my filing this.
Okay, but how is a complaint being filed against you retaliation?
The complaints were asked for by Ms. Altendorf. Others have testified this fact that they were intimidated to file these complaints against me. They were not just something that the employee decided on their own to do.
Okay, but why do you believe Ms. Altendorf wanted employees to file complaints against you?
Ms. Altendorf wanted to be gone in case I decide to file again with the DWD this time.
So your testimony is Ms. Altendorf wanted you gone because you submitted this letter.
Correct, and that they feared that I would be submitting it to the DWD as well. That I would be moving forward.
Why do you believe that?
There was no reason for them not to believe it, and I did not state or even mention to anybody that I was not going to move forward with it.
You did not state to Mr. Stousland that you were rescinding this letter?
I stated that I was rescinding this letter at this time. I did not state that I was not gonna submit to the DWD on another later date.
Did you ever state that you were going to submit something to the
I did not.
DWD? Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Did you have a contract with the district?
No,
So you were an at-will employee, right?
correct.
So if Miss Eltendorf wanted you gone, they could have just terminated your employment on the spot, right?
Correct.
Okay. So then why wouldn't they do that, I guess? I mean,
Sir. Please go ahead. He
Why do
can't
you believe the
possibly answer
district
that
did-
question.
if the district wanted you gone because you filed this letter and they were concerned about you filing a DWD complaint, why wouldn't they have fired you?
Objection, speculation.
You are asking for him to speculate on it, so I am going to sustain the objection.
Okay.
And you can ask him if he has firsthand knowledge of why that's the case. But you're right now, the way the question was phrased, you were asking why the district would do it, not his belief or his
Do
understanding.
you have
of
any
it.
belief or understanding as to why the district would not have just terminated you immediately after filing this letter?
They had to justify it. They had to find a means to justify the release, the demotion.
Why do you believe, but you were at will, right?
Correct?
So why did they have to justify anything?
To the school board. I had
Okay.
school board members that did support me.
Okay.
Attorney Pollard, I just want to make you aware that you are sharing your desktop right now. So
Oh, thank you.
I don't want something to come in that shouldn't be on record.
No, I
Like a
appreciate
client
it.
list, for example.
Is
Go
the
ahead,
client-
Attorney Pollard.
So after you rescinded the letter, well, let me ask you this. How did you rescind the letter?
I went in with Mr. Nowak and Mr. Stolson and stated that at this time I would like to rescind the letter because of the fact that it caused grief within my family and my wife, and she was upset that I submitted it without talking to her first.
So what was your expectation after rescinding the letter about what the district would do with the letter?
The district should have stopped the illegal practice.
Do you know what? Okay. Did Mr. Stolson ever say, we're not going to look into this?
He never said they were.
Okay.
He was aware of it.
At any time after filing this letter, did you ever indicate to anyone at the district that you intended to file a DWD complaint?
No,
And I believe you testified after you submitted this letter, you never had any discussion with, or your next discussion with Dr. Stolson was in March. Is that correct?
it was around March time, correct? March or April.
Do you recall having a meeting with Dr. Stolson on February 19th, 2021?
I do not.
I believe you indicated when we looked at exhibit R12 that you thought those were Brittany Eltendorf's notes, correct?
Correct.
Do you have a recollection of meeting with Brittany Eltendorf on February 19th?
I do not.
Okay. So you don't have any recollection of having a meeting with another district administrator on February 19th, 2021 to discuss your blowups and your communication, or that Billy Joe was doing your job?
I do not.
Okay. Do you recall having a meeting with Dr. Stolson on June 4th, 2021?
I do not at this time.
Do you have a recollection of having a meeting with Dr. Stolson to address your 3 areas of concern, including your communication, managing people, and your level of excellence?
That was the previous meeting I had discussed that I thought occurred in either March or April.
Okay. pull up exhibit R5. I'm pulling up an exhibit which has been previously admitted as R5. This is a staff evaluation for you that was for the 2020-2021 year, correct?
Correct.
So, and if I look to the last page, it looks like it's signed by you and Ms. Eltendorf in July of 2021. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you remember meeting with Ms. Eltendorf to review this evaluation?
Correct.
And it looks like there's different performance ratings based on different categories of job duties and qualities. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
It looks like for each category, there is 2 different X's. Do you see that?
I do.
Is one of these X's yours?
No, I do not believe so.
Okay. Do you know who placed the X's on this evaluation?
Ms. Altendorf.
Any idea why she would be placing multiple X's in one subject line?
I do not know.
Okay. Looking at this evaluation in July of 2021, which is 4 months after you submitted your letter to Mr. Nowak, it looks like with respect to job knowledge, there was a box checked for needs improvement. Don continues to need work in his supervisory duties as well as planning in his department. Do you see that?
Correct.
Do you agree that you needed work in your supervisory duties?
No,
Why not?
I had not received any complaints that there was anything wrong with them up until this time.
So how would you rate your performance with respect to supervision duties?
Meets requirements.
Okay. What about initiatives and resourcefulness? This is a box checked again, needs improvement, comments, follow-up is needed often to see if tasks are completed. Do you see that?
I do.
Do you agree that you needed improvement with respect to initiatives and resourcefulness?
I do not.
Why not?
I believe that there were no complaints previously and that I was meeting the requirements.
With respect to section F, communication effectiveness, again, there's 2 boxes checked for needs improvement. Comment, Don does not follow up on requests or suggestions. When decisions are made, all parties are not informed. Do you agree that that was an issue with your performance?
I agree my communication could have been improved, but I do not agree with the comment.
Okay. Productivity and proficiency, a box is checked for needs improvement. Comment, Don has mentioned many times that he can't do something because he doesn't have time, needs to work on time management skills. Do you agree with that comment?
I do not.
Why not?
I was in charge of 7 buildings, over 500,000 square feet of buildings. I was the only person running the department. There were over 35 employees I was managing. And then on top of that, I was asked to do many other tasks. We just got done doing major construction projects for 4 or 5 years in a row.
Okay. So you felt you didn't have enough time to get your job done. Is that fair to say?
I was overwhelmed. Yes.
You were overwhelmed. Was Billy Joe was your assistant during much of your tenure as the supervisor for building and grounds, right?
Incorrect. She was actually the assistant to the business auxiliary services person. She helped out with the department in processing purchase orders, contacting contractors to get them scheduled to come in and perform work. She was not in charge of anything to do with the actual managing of the department.
Were any concerns ever raised to you about Billy Joe actually doing your job?
No.
You never had a discussion with Dr. Stousland about Billy Joe doing your job?
No.
Okay.
A lot of people believe she was doing it, although she will testify if you want to bring her back that she was not doing it.
Which people believe that she was doing your job?
I can't say specifically.
Well, you just said a lot of people, so can you maybe think of one?
Ms. Altendorf, how's that?
Okay, anyone else?
Not that I can specifically think of.
Is Miss Altendorf a lot of people?
You asked for one person. You did not ask for a list of people.
Okay. So you can't think of anyone else other than Miss Altendorf who felt that Billy Joe was doing your job?
Perhaps some of the custodians did.
Okay. So after you received this evaluation, were you upset?
A little.
Why?
I didn't agree with it.
And do you believe that just because you don't agree with it, that means the district was retaliating against you?
The district was retaliating against me. There's no doubt on it.
So in your mind, any negative feedback or criticism of your job performance after you filed your February 17th letter would have been retaliation. Is that fair to say?
Constructive feedback is one thing, negative feedback is another.
Okay. You don't consider the evaluation to be constructive feedback?
Not in the tone and the manner which it was presented.
Okay. Just, I guess jumping back to the letter, I mean, I think you testified that you thought that Miss Altendorf was aware of the letter. Is that correct?
Correct.
Why do you think that?
Because of Mrs. Monton told me that the very next day that she had spoken to, Brittany had spoken to her and wanted her to do her list of hours that she had to take off of her timesheet and that she was due.
And I believe Miss Moan testified that she was compensated for those hours.
As far as she's aware, she doesn't know for sure.
Did Miss Altendorf ever state to you that she received this letter?
No,
Did she ever state to you that she was angry with you for filing this letter?
no,
Did she ever bring up this letter to you at any time?
no,
Did anyone from the district ever bring up this letter to you at any time after February 17th, 2021?
no.
You had talked about the fact that you were going to file a wage complaint with the DWD. Am I understanding your testimony correctly? Or that you felt the district should have known that you were going to file a wage complaint?
There was no reason for the district not to think that I would have.
What about the fact that you weren't eligible for overtime?
That had nothing to do with my original filing of the complaint to the district to begin with.
Well, what would your complaint be with the DWD?
A wage complaint that they were performing an illegal practice with the employees working within the school district. It doesn't have to be myself. I don't have to be the one that it was against.
Why do you believe that?
Check your DWD rules and your Fair Standard Labors Act rules.
Okay. I'm going to share what has been marked as actually, this hasn't been admitted yet. I believe we looked at a different similar document that was part of the performance improvement plan that had some notes on it. This is exhibit R6. Do you recognize this document?
And excuse me, just for my understanding, are you saying that this is the similar document to whatever we put in? It just doesn't have the note on it?
I don't know that it's the exact same document. I can't
Okay,
confirm
fair
or
enough.
deny it.
Great. Then we'll start from that. Excuse me.
I do recognize it.
Okay. Is this the performance improvement plan, or at least one version of the performance improvement plan?
Correct.
Rotate it. looking at performance issues and concerns, there's a list of numerous issues or concerns and qualities that you lack. It states Don lacks a vision for B&G that includes both short and long-term actions. Do you agree with that statement?
No,
Okay. Looking on this column for expected standards, one of the expected standards is that team members understand clarity of expectations and work and are properly trained. Do you think that is a reasonable expectation for your employer?
yes,
On the next page, another concern among others was that Don lacks the ability to develop trusting relationships with staff that lead to shared ownership and pride in their work. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
I think it's a fair expectation. I do not feel that it was a fair criticism.
Do you consider that to be a negative feedback or constructive feedback?
It could be viewed as both.
Okay. In this case, how did you view it? Did you consider that to be negative feedback?
I felt that as being a good feedback, but I also feel that no matter what I did, I would not be able to accomplish that.
You don't believe you, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Ms. Altendorf actually wanted me to have personal relationships with my staff. That's one thing I do not do, is have personal relationships with any subordinates that I work with.
Okay. So you agree then that you do not do what Ms. Altendorf was expecting you to do?
I do not do personal relationships. I do not share my personal life with my staff. Twofold reasons. One, I have to be able to make judgment calls on the staff without being affected by my personal feelings. And two, Mrs. Mon does not want my and her personal life shared with others.
Okay, I'm just looking at what's here on the performance improvement plan. There's nothing about personal relationships. It's developing trusting relationships with staff that lead to shared ownership and pride in their work. You see that?
I had trusting relationships with many of my staff.
Did you have a trusting relationship with Lars Neske?
Lars Neske was not there long enough to create one.
Would it be fair for your employer to want you to develop a good trusting relationship with Mr. Neske?
Mr. Neske was being manipulated by Ms. Altendorf to not have a trusting relationship with me. He met with her at least approximately weekly for a number of hours, providing her with feedback. She would send him emails asking whether or not I was lying. In order to develop a trusting relationship, it has to be not just from my level, it needs to be also from my supervisor's level.
Okay. Well, what about your relationship with Ms. Altendorf? Did you have a trusting relationship with her?
I'd like to believe so.
Okay. Did you ever have any confrontations with Ms. Altendorf during your employment?
Yes,
Did you ever raise your voice at Ms. Altendorf?
as much as she raised hers back at me.
Do you think it's appropriate to raise your voice to your direct supervisor?
I do not think it's appropriate for my direct supervisor to raise their voice and to swear at me.
Well, that wasn't my question, sir. My question
So
was, do you think it's appropriate to raise your voice at your direct supervisor?
I do not.
But you acknowledge that you did do that.
Yes.
Okay. Stop sharing. So from your standpoint, if any feedback from the district about yelling or raising your voice is, you call that negative criticism and retaliation, is that correct?
Incorrect.
Well, what do you call it then?
I
Constructive
would
criticism?
call it constructive feedback if it was occurring.
Okay. So if it was occurring, which you acknowledge that it was, and you've got constructive feedback about it, that's all legitimate business concerns from your employer, correct?
Correct.
And as an at-will employee, the district could terminate your employment, modify your employment for any reason or for no reason at all. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. But as of the date of this performance improvement plan in September of 2021, which is 7 months after you filed your letter, the district had not terminated your employment, correct?
Correct.
And they had not modified your employment, correct?
Correct.
I want to clean something up here. I compared R6 with the performance improvement plan that was already admitted. R6 actually appears to be a follow-up to the performance improvement plan from September. So for instance, on the second to last page, it notes employee engagement surveys in September, October, December, and January. So I think you might want to ask some questions to clear up when this document was made or what, because he said he testified he recognized it, but there's some question about the date of it.
Thank you, Judge. Pull it back up.
And I am going to mark this as R6 because it is a different document.
Thank you. So back to R6. So looking at what Judge Surge was just alluding to, on the right-hand column, there is a status column. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And it looks like for each of the success measures that were included in the plan, there's notes indicating not met. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you didn't actually meet any of the requirements of your performance improvement plan. Is that correct?
For Ms. Altendorf, correct.
Is Ms. Altendorf the only district employee who was involved in this performance improvement plan?
Correct.
Mr. Nowak was not involved?
Correct.
As the judge noted, like, for example, in this column regarding employee engagement, it indicates that this standard was not met. 4 employee engagement surveys have been conducted in September, October, December, and January. So do you recall reviewing this plan with Ms. Altendorf or anyone else at any time in January or after of 2022?
Just Ms. Altendorf.
Okay.
And actually, this paid document was not presented to me until the April meeting in 2022 when I was being offered the demotion or to retire or resign.
And I'm sorry if I could just interject here. I would have made an objection that that's a 2-part question. And maybe I can just suggest that we ask the second part again.
I guess my question was, do you recall reviewing this document with Ms. Altendorf or anyone else from the district?
This document was reviewed at the April meeting between Ms. Altendorf, myself in 2022, and Mr. Nowak at the meeting in which they offered me either to resign or take the demotion.
This indicates, were you aware that employee engagement surveys had been conducted?
Correct.
What was your understanding of those surveys?
That they were going to be sent out on a regular basis. They were sent out only to the custodial staff. Ms. Altendorf was going to be in charge of trying to get people to respond back. And it was her survey, and it was supposed to be anonymous. I did find out later on that the very first question on it was your name. So for that reason, many people felt they could not fill out the employee engagement survey in fear of retaliation.
Did you think that it was a good thing that employees were taking these surveys?
It could have provided some good feedback had it not been biased. Had it not had the first question on it, your name, had it been actually truly anonymous, and had everybody that was working within the department not been fearful of Ms. Altendorf,
So you believe that the employees, well, it says here that no survey met the 3.5 or higher engagement expectation. Do you know what that's referring to?
The percentage of employees within the department that actually answered back.
Okay. And what was the and do you agree that no employees met the 3.5 requirement?
I wouldn't know. I never saw the results.
Okay.
I never saw the surveys.
Just give me 1 sec. I'm going to see if I can pull them up here.
That's a graph. I know what you're looking for.
So you said you never saw the results of the surveys?
I saw a graph indicating what the percentages were for
Okay.
each question asked.
And your testimony, let me see here if I can get this. Is this the graph you're referring to?
Correct.
And there's columns for surveys taken in September of 2021, October 2021, December 2021. And these include questions such as, at work, my supervisor makes my work expectations clear on a routine basis. My supervisor provides me feedback I need to grow in my work. My supervisor is consistent when administering policies or work experiences. And there's additional categories. And for each of these surveys, the total overall score was below the 3.5 threshold. Is that correct?
Correct.
And your belief is that these surveys are skewed because they were not anonymous.
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any other reason to believe these survey results are skewed?
Well, if I remember right, you said that there were 4 surveys sent out. The 4th survey, after the 3rd survey was done, Ms. Altendorf changed the rules. Ms. Altendorf at that point in time said I needed to go out and encourage the employees to now fill out the survey.
And what's wrong with that?
Why did the rules change?
What rules?
That she was going to be sending the surveys out, that she was going to take care of trying to get people to respond.
Well, wouldn't you want the employees to fill out these surveys and get their feedback as their supervisor?
I sure would, but when she said she was sending them out, she said that she would take care of it and that I shouldn't have anything to do with it.
So you felt that it wasn't your job to do that. That was Miss Altendorf's job.
Ms. Altendorf told me it was her job, that she would be doing it.
But then in January, she asked you to do it, right?
Correct.
Did you get angry at her for doing that?
I did not.
If that's what she told you to do, then you should do it, right? Because she's your supervisor.
How was I to do that? Everybody was already turned against me. Ms. Altendorf already had the staff manipulated enough that no matter what I did, they were intimidated and would not respond.
So at that point, you felt the staff was turned against you, and therefore you didn't need to do what your employer was asking you to do.
I didn't have the opportunity to.
In January of 2021, did you have the opportunity to obtain these surveys from your staff?
January of 2022.
I'm sorry, January of 2022.
I would not have had the opportunity between the time that we had our meeting and the time that she was going to be sending out the next survey.
I thought you were sending out the survey.
No, she was sending out the survey. I never saw the survey go out. She sent the survey out every
So
time.
what was the expectation, that you would just encourage staff to complete the survey?
Correct.
And you felt that that was somehow not a good thing?
Look at your participation rate. It's the same thing for all 3 months that she took care of. It's the same employees that were filing for it.
You mean at the top?
Correct.
Which is
68.75% of the employees within the department were filing for it. It was a small department at that time. There were what, 8 custodians and 5 maintenance employees.
So we got 13 employees in total.
So 68.75 would be how many employees actually responding?
Maybe 7 or 8.
7 or 8. Thank you.
And what's the problem with that?
The problem with that is that it was 5 of the maintenance guys, because they were the ones that were already intimidated. It would have been it would have been anybody that would not have been intimidated, would not have been filing unless Ms. Altendorf had them already turned against me.
So the employees who were not intimidated, as you put it, just refused to complete this survey?
Correct?
Well,
If there were-
doesn't that demonstrate a lack of leadership on your part, that the employees weren't following the district's expectations?
Incorrect. The employees were fearful of retaliation. Therefore, they would not take the survey.
I'm not following you. Why would they be retaliated against for taking the survey if Ms. Altendorf wanted them to take the survey?
Because if they submitted a good survey, she would come after them.
I see. Come after them how? By putting them on a performance improvement plan?
Intimidation, any method that that's under her disposal. There was
What's
an
an example? Go ahead. What do you mean by intimidation? What's an example of this intimidation you're talking about?
Okay, an example, Ms. Went's letter. Ms. Went testified that she did this because Ms. Altendorf intimidated her and she was fearful for her job. Mr. Lenz's letter, our signing of the letter from Mr. Lars, he was intimidated and fearful for his job. The entire department felt that way, and it was because of Mrs. Altendorf.
So Ms. Altendorf intimidated these people to such an extent that they wrote multiple letters about your lack of leadership.
Correct? 2 letters.
Okay. Let's see. I'm pulling up what is, we've marked this as Exhibit R8. I believe this was already admitted as Exhibit C7. Do you recognize this email?
I do.
This is an email from Mr. Nowak to you dated April 19th, 2022. And it references a meeting on April 11th between you, Ms. Altendorf, and Mr. Nowak. Do you remember that meeting?
I do.
It says, at the meeting on April 11th, you, Mr. Erickson, refused to choose either of the options presented, and you also refused to discuss any aspect of your employment with us, and continually stated no comment. Is that an accurate statement?
It is.
So you refused to discuss any aspect of your employment with your direct supervisor?
Correct?
Would that refusal alone be grounds for termination?
Could be.
Okay. And then in the second paragraph, notwithstanding the foregoing and based on your failure to meet the standards and expectations identified in your performance improvement plan, the district has decided that effective as of July 1, 2022, you'll be transferred to a maintenance position. And then it says, at all times, both prior to and the second sentence in the following paragraph. Let's see. I'm sorry. The next paragraph, the letter or the email concludes, we will be contacting you to schedule a meeting prior to May 1, 2022 to discuss your new job duties and responsibilities in more detail. Did you ever meet with Ms. Altendorf or Mr. Nowak on May 1?
I do not see that part of, sorry, I do not see that part. Can you scroll up?
See right here.
I believe we did, but I would refuse again to discuss I would
So
not,
you-
I would not take the position.
Why not?
You really want me to answer that? I will
Yes.
answer it.
Please.
Because it is my belief that not only would I be training the new individual that was replacing my position, I would also be put into a position working with the same fellow employees that were turned against me. So I would have to then work with these guys side by side. In addition, that once the new employee that replaced me was in place and comfortable, I would then be worked on and dismissed as an at-will employee.
Well, but you never met with them, correct?
Correct?
So how do you even know what your job duties and responsibilities would have been?
I don't, but I know what the maintenance positions are. I did not
Okay.
feel like being on call 24/7, 7 days a week to respond to building calls.
Okay, but you never had it, I guess you never gave the district a chance to even discuss your new job duties and responsibilities. So
Nope,
how do you know you would have been on call 24/7?
that's what a maintenance person's jobs are.
Okay. What about compensation? Did you ever discuss what your compensation would be in the new position?
Nope,
Are you aware the district was willing to keep your compensation the same?
nope.
Okay. So instead of transferring to a different position, what did you do?
I resigned. I retired.
Okay. When you retired, did you, or I guess anytime before you retired, did you ever bring up to anybody at the district that you felt you were being retaliated against?
You mean support staff and friends that I had that working there? Yes.
What about the administrators?
Administrators, no.
Why not?
Why would I?
Well, I don't know. Why did you file this complaint?
Because it was an illegal practice that based on the laws and DWD rules and Fair Standards Labor Act that the district was performing and was unfair to the employees that were working there.
Okay, this document on the screen now is marked as Exhibit R9. This is a letter dated April 27th, 2022. Do you recognize this letter?
I do.
Is that your signature on the letter?
It is.
Is this, well, if you go ahead and just with where it says, Dear Mr. Stelsland, would you just read the letter from that point forward?
This letter is to serve as an official notice of my retirement from Germantown School District, effective June 1st, 2022. It is unreasonable for me to stay employed within the Germantown School District. Employees in the maintenance department have no respect and are allowed to continue going over my head, undermining the authority of my position. I am disappointed by the outcome of events, but understand the Germantown District is looking to reform its maintenance department. I have to wonder why I would be required to remain in my role as a director from April 1st until July 1, 2022, if I'm not doing what is required. I am grateful for the time here. This position allowed me to grow my talents and my areas for improvement.
When you referenced at the end areas for improvement, were you talking about the performance improvement plan?
No,
Okay. In one paragraph, you stated, I understand the Germantown School District is looking to reform its maintenance department. So do you agree that that's I guess a legitimate objective of the district to reform its maintenance department?
I believe they had the option to, but I don't think that was the ultimate goal of what they were trying to achieve.
Then why did
I
you
would-
say that in this letter?
Has the department changed? Has there been reform? Demonstrate some. It's been
Well,
2
you're not there
years.
anymore.
It's been 2 years. It should have occurred.
Okay. I don't see anywhere in this letter where it says, I believe I'm being retaliated against for raising a wage complaint a year and a half ago. Am I missing that?
It's not in there.
Why not?
Why would it be?
Well, if there's an illegal practice going on at the district and you're on your way out the door, why wouldn't you just notify them of your concern?
I already did.
You
Back in
notified them of
February.
retaliation?
back in February 17th of 2021, I did.
Well, that's
in
the
my letter
overtime.
then.
Yeah, you
It is-
notified them of the overtime issue, but you didn't say anything that you felt you were being retaliated against.
I did read the letter. I had fear of retaliation for my reporting it.
Well, fear is one thing, but actually happening is another thing, right?
It actually happened.
Why didn't you tell anyone at the district about it?
Who?
Dr. Stousland,
Dr. Stousland was aware of it,
he was aware of the retaliation?
correct?
Okay. What about anyone at the board?
My job was not to be in contact with the board. I was not a liaison between the school district and the board. The only thing that I had to do with the board was to actually make reports during building committees. And actually, even after the February 17th, I can remember one building committee meeting in particular. After my report, Mr. Stousland came and congratulated me on the great job I did.
Right. So that's you had testified, previously, you really wanted to retire from the district, you liked this job. But apparently, over this 1.5 year period where you were undergoing a performance improvement plan and discussing a change in position, you never once said, I believe I'm being retaliated against, correct?
Why did I not get an exit review or an exit, exit interview?
Well, you didn't answer my question. You never brought it up, right?
I never brought it up, at least for this letter and to the school board.
Okay. Okay, hold on just one sec.
I mean, we know you guys are in the same room. It's perfectly acceptable.
I'm sorry?
We're clearly aware that you guys are in the same room, so there's no problem talking to each other.
We are.
Okay. No more questions. Thank you, Mr. Erickson. All
Judge,
right.
if you can, I probably won't have very many, but if I can just have 2 minutes here, I think I need a drink. But,
Sure, we'll go off the record until, why don't we, if there's not too many, why don't we circle back at 11:30?
Great, thank you.